Hello everyone. We're having an IT session today which is based on databases. We'll be learning on how to construct a database from some given raw information and to bring it to the right format and store it in the table. So before we start, I want to give you an overview of what the topic is about. Today we're learning about World War II and how a lot of British families were forced to give up their children, and those children were relocated into different homes that were away from the main cities. So there was a huge evacuation which was in place, and thousands of children had to be moved into new homes. These children were the evacuees, and we would have to find suitable homes for them. Of course, you can understand if a child needs medical attention, we would put them in a home who has a medical background, like a nurse. But before we start, let's make this interesting by watching a short video on what was actually happening back at that time. I'm sure most of you were not there, but it's nice to watch the video and have a historical perspective on our lesson.
On the 3rd of September 1939, Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain declared that subsequent to Germany's refusal to withdraw its troops from Poland, Britain was now at war with Germany. In the full expectation that larger cities, and especially its ports, would be prime targets for Nazi bombing raids, the British government embarked on the largest evacuation programme in the history of England. Over 3 million, mostly children, were evacuated away from the cities and ports to rural areas throughout the country. Some were sent as far away as America, Canada, and Australia. Ray Evans was just 6 years old at the time, so it's easy to understand why he would have had a hard time adjusting to being separated from his mother and other siblings. Although most host families welcomed and treated the evacuees well, there were some who simply took children in for the extra rations and small government stipend they received for taking them in. Unfortunately for Ray, he initially found himself limited in homes where he was often mistreated, and sometimes left to go hungry while his host families kept his share of food rations to himself. He ran away from his first billet in spite of the scolding he knew he had to take from the billeting officer, as she realised she would once again need to find a place for him.
So we can see that how certain children were misplaced in the wrong homes. At this point, the students will have a short discussion with the teacher on how to find a suitable home and what things should be looking for. Alright, so after watching the video and having a short discussion, we will see what the objectives or targets of this lesson are. I want my students to be able to form attributes of the database for children as well as for sheltering families. On your tables, I have placed a small paragraph regarding the child who is evacuated or a family who has certain characteristics, like how many bedrooms they have, what kind of hobbies do they have, what kind of interests do they have. And you will extract that information out of those paragraphs, so it's on all of your desks already while you're watching the video. But don't look at it right now. Let's see what the target I want to achieve in this lesson. You need to identify data type, field size, and the primary key. We will come to that later on. I'm pretty sure you can understand a data type would be, okay, I'll also come to that later on. And I want you to match the evacuees with the sheltering homes in the end. Of course, you can see the whole objective of this lesson is to be able to extract information from those paragraphs and to place the children in the right homes. By doing this, you will be learning a lot of features about databases. You'll have very interesting discussions in your own group as well. You'll be engaged on a hands-on activity, as well as you'll have a chance to coordinate amongst your group as well. So this is what my objective is. Okay, for all those students who've got a child information with them, I want you to extract these. Of course, the child names is important. The child's age, gender, interests, health. If the child is sociable or if he is not very sociable. Any extra information that is in the paragraph that cannot be covered from these fields. Each of these are called fields. And while you're doing that, I want you to decide for yourself what should be the field size. For example, if I look at gender, just an M or an F should be enough, which means it's a 1. The field size should be 1. In age, I think 2 digits should be fine. So these are the things that I want my students to realize, and I want them to give me answers while I'm discussing this with them. And the data type. So here would be a number, here would be a character, here would be some words, but we need to make sure that our information is as summarized as possible. So for those students who've got a paragraph about the families, I want them to extract similar information and decide on the field size and data type. Of course, this would at least take 10 minutes to go through with the students and make sure that they understand how to extract information. I would probably even do an example in class. If this was a real class, I would have done an example, but right now I'm just showing. Alright, this is the instructions that I've already told them, and I will have to give them time to fill out the database row by themselves. Now this is individual work. This is where they need to concentrate on their own, and they will be engaged very effectively because they will have something in their hand and they know. So probably I would leave the slide at this or that and ask the students to do it. I will go around the class, make sure they're doing it, or they have any questions they can ask me. But they'll be engaged in a hands-on activity, so behavior engagement will be very prominently present in the class at that time. Alright, now that you've filtered out all the information from the paragraphs, did most of you realize that even if you're matching children with their families, there's not enough information to identify the child or the family? Because there could be a Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and there could be the child whose name is Smith as well, or Joseph, or John, or any other names that are commonly present. So I will ask my students to realize the importance of having an ID number or some sort of a primary key. And we will just together discuss and decide on how would we want to create an identity. An ID number is like a number, or maybe some sort of a letter and a number, like a surname and a number. So we will do that for another 5 or 10 minutes, and this is a whole group and a whole class activity. Alright, after this, I would have to divide this class into certain groups. So for each, I think on each desk, I want 5 students to be present, and I'll give you these roles: leader, timekeeper, reporter, communication officer, and bulletin officer. We can see that there are certain characteristics of these roles, and when I'm handing out the roles in each group, I would have already known my class and which student is capable of being a leader, and this is sorted out according to the different learning styles they have, like oral or kinesthetic or visual, or if some student who's not very good at communication skills, you would probably have that as a timekeeper. So I will divide the class into groups, put them together, and this is a time where they are engaging. At this point, my class would have already formed the groups, and they must be discussing on the roles. So I think the whole learning depends on how they structure out their group in their own cohort. What we have here would be cognitive engagement. Behavioral engagement is also present because the class is disciplined and structured in a particular way, and they would be seating in that appropriate way as well. Of course, as far as we can understand, and the students would probably understand as well, the leader is explaining the class to his group, so he's having an interaction with his fellow members. The bulletin office is writing down the names of the evacuee against the carer's home, so there's a lot of matching up and cognition going on in their minds as well about how to place a right child with the right family. And we have some sort of They would be probably very deeply involved at this time. This is what I'm expecting, that they will be talking amongst themselves, they will be deciding on certain roles, and of course having a humorous talk as well, as in one place it does mention that it needs to be fun. Like Newman mentioned in one of his articles that I've read in the reading list, that they should provide opportunities for fun, they should permit diverse forms of talent. So of course we've got the diverse learning styles and talents here as well. And they should have opportunities for students to assume ownership of their own conception and execution and evaluation of the learning. So this is all present now. This would take about 50 to 20 minutes of the class time. And it should be very interesting for them, and I'll be going around and helping them as well. After all that is done, another 15 minutes, I'll just summarize on the lesson. This lesson has also involved communities that are from other nations, so cult communities or immigrants or those children or those students who have actually left their countries to come in and settle to this country, which means there will be emotional engagement present in the class as well, because they could relate to the whole process of relocating and finding a new home. I'll just summarize the lesson in the end on how you were doing two-way information activities. That information was with two different parties and they had to exchange that information. They were communicating, they were sharing resources, they were engaged in a hands-on activity, and eventually they will computerize the database in Microsoft Access, which would probably be in the next lesson. This is how it is, and I think it would be very interesting for many students. There could be discussions that are beyond the scope of this lesson as well, which I always appreciate my students would have. Thank you.